Well, we are going to try to have some fun with this today as well. And really what we're here to do is talk a lot about board superintendent relationships, and they are absolutely critical to student success and community engagement, and they are something that have to be tended to by all parties, the board members and the district administrator. And so with that, let's just get into it, and let's talk a little bit, and we'll start with Joe and work our way down, but let's just talk a little bit about, from each of your perspectives, what's the role of the board and the role of the superintendent?
Well, that's a really easy question to answer, especially when my board president is sitting two doors down from me here.
Attorney between us.
Actually, if you haven't read the book by Crabble, Crabble has done a lot of great work. There was a presentation at the State Education Convention that was done by WASB and others. And Crabble defines what a Board of Education does is school boards exist to represent the vision and values of their community. Focused on, and in my opinion, the school board should be focused on governance through policy making, collaborative planning, strategic goal setting, and progress monitoring of said goals. Now that's pretty heavy, and again, this is being recorded, but very high level. Where versus with the administration drives the detailed strategic planning and district level and school level goal setting based off of the strategic plan itself and daily execution of implementing said plans. Now, first and foremost, I mean, I'm assuming many of you, I know I've got to meet some of you here throughout the breaks and so on, but you have clearly articulated strategic goals for your school district. Ours rarely have changed, so we have 4. One is ensuring that students are ready for college, career, and life. The second one is making sure that we're recruiting and retaining high-quality staff. Third is being fiscally responsible. And then fourth, mutually beneficial partnerships. And when we say partnerships, we're talking about business partners, employers, post-secondary partners, and so on. But those 4 are memorized by me and have been because they've been the same for the last 10 years. And then based off of those strategic goals, you develop your strategic plans. And again, I believe the board should focus on the high-level planning, and then the detailed planning and execution is done by the administration.
Okay.
Thanks, Joe. You know, as I look at it and work with the different groups and sort of am literally during the day, you know, in the middle of working with the boards and the administration, it really is where the board is the policy driver of the organization. And the administration or the administrator is the CEO and runs the company day to day. And then there's these blurred lines because there isn't a black and white distinction between those pieces. So where I get involved sometimes is usually with those blurred lines and people feeling a little bit offended that somebody's in their lane, for lack of a better way. So part of the cure, part of what we'll talk about today is how do you avoid that problem and take on that challenge up front where you're in those blurred lines.
Not much I can add to that. Definitely the school board is there for policy primarily, looking at the budget. And it's really the administration, of course, that is going to be carrying out those things that the board is giving direction to the administration to do. Of course, a lot of times that can get very complicated, and occasionally the board starts drifting into that management area. So those are things that, you know, I'm not up here because I'm any expert, that we've got it worked out, but that's something that we're constantly working on.
Kind of like what she said, there's not much to add to that, but the role of a school board, in my opinion, is depending on how many people you have. We have 5. I know there's 7 and 9 out there, but at least in Greendale, my goal is for the 5 of us to work together as a cohesive unit, as a team. A fractured board does nothing but cause problems in the school district. It can drive away good superintendents. So at the end of the day, we don't always have to agree. Disagreement and different opinions make us better, but a good team is the goal of the school board.
That's great. And, you know, one of the things that every school board and superintendent professes, and we're going to question 2 now, is they're always laser focused on student achievement, or it's all about the kids, or we're all for the kids. And if you've looked at this Crab Hill book, there's a book out on coaching for school boards, and that I'm referencing the presentation that Joe mentioned. And one of the things that he believes is that school boards need coaches. And we're not here to take a position on that, but if what he says is that if every decision that is made by a school board is made through the lens of student academic achievement, which is a big part of what School Boards for Academic Excellence is about, which I'm a part of, most of the day-to-day operations and the blurring of the lines will take care of themselves. So tell us, what do you do when you're focused on academic excellence instead of the management of the schools? And the superintendent is in a very unique position because you're working directly with the board, and if it's working well, it's really you're the liaison between the board and the superintendent. But if you're really zeroed in on student achievement or academic excellence, what does that look like? Because everybody talks about it.
Yeah, so one thing that I believe is unique in our school district is that I've been there I'm heading into my 18th year. So I served for 4 years as the assistant superintendent, and then I've been the superintendent since 2011. And so, I also lived in New Berlin up until December, and now I'm a resident of McWanago, go McWanago. But I'm not sure that there's a lot of tenured superintendents within individual school districts. Now, I think some of the surrounding districts around me, they have longer-term superintendents, but that, in my opinion, I think that makes it unique. And so I've had the experience of working with the district as we've kind of transitioned through. But to kick it back to student achievement, I think one of the most important pieces that I've learned along the way is when I first got to New Berlin was seen and known to be a college prep school district. And I went into it taking the assistant superintendent position, knowing that that's what the values of that school district and that community were. But what I also felt was we were missing a whole lot of kids that weren't going to college. And not only that, but we also didn't need every kid to go to college. And so I actually started working with Bill under Governor Walker's regime about, the fact that we were, overinflating colleges and not putting enough emphasis on supporting the workforce, which in turn impacts economic development. And so my point being here, bringing it back to student achievement, is making sure that we clearly articulate what student achievement means. And it doesn't always mean an ACT score, and it doesn't always mean a third grade WKCE math score. That kids are much more than that. Now, what I will say is those are all very important, right? Those are important indicators and benchmarks along the way. But it's much more than that. We've had to clearly articulate what that is, though. We in the school district in New Berlin, look us up. We have a college and career readiness dashboard. So we've clearly articulated what we believe is important for college readiness. We've articulated what we believe is good for career readiness, and we've clearly articulated what we believe is important to be life ready. And for us, those are the student achievement indicators that will drive our success. So I would encourage you that if you don't, I mean, I think you need to define student achievement in your school district, but make sure that you're not narrowing it down to, again, just a test score.
We kind of feel the same way right down the road, right down Grange into Greendale. Our tagline is cultivating excellence in every student. Clearly, not every kid wants to go to a four-year college. Some kids might not want to go to college at all. I think the board supports the vision and goals that our superintendent and our admin staff has set. We try and make sure that every kid has an opportunity when they walk out of Greendale High School. And as board members, we try and support that and find new ways and to get creative in order to give them those opportunities.
Our school board makes it very intentional to revisit our goals that we set every year. So we personally, well, just as a board, we set goals annually. We align them with the school district strategic plan. We also align it with the superintendent evaluation as well. And by focusing on those, well, it helps us from getting dragged into those distractions. And being able to focus on those. Also, as previous presenters here were mentioning, like, are you always going back and reviewing the spend that you have done? Have you gotten the results that you expected? And so I feel that that's something that we've really been doing well, is reevaluating the decisions that have been made, looking, did these work? Did we get the outcomes we want? And so when you're focusing on those goals and then reviewing the outcomes, then you find yourself being a more successful school district and really doing well for your students.
Having the opportunity to go to different sized districts in different part of the state, it's really interesting and it's really important. And an important piece of that is nobody in the room is going to disagree that the goal ought to be good student achievement. But I'll bet you there's a lot of difference of opinion as to what that is. And here's where a role of school board members and even newer members as far as that go really become critical, because when we talk about the lines and the areas of responsibilities, what you may want to do in Rio may be different than what we do in New London or what we do in other places. And it's so critical that you as local school board members determine what that definition is going to be and what your goals are. And what you want to do in your community, from the lawyer's standpoint, it's what you want to do as long as we help you make it legal, but it doesn't have to be the same. And that definition can be different everywhere as far as that can go. So that's a really important role, first, of the board. I think a difficult spot for administration, because there is a lot of background and education, and they bring so much of the industry to the meetings and the other aspects, is then to bring that education but leave the policy piece of the direction for your local decision to carry the day and to stay within that, even when they don't agree, that they have a strong opinion, but to stay within that policy aspect. Those are goals within that as I see that.
You know, if you think about it around student achievement, the whole idea of looking for ways, and I am sure many of you who are new to the board by the end of the month have some clear ideas of what you want to accomplish, but also what I like to say is the responsibility of the role is probably settling in and kind of realizing the weight. The local definition of student achievement can actually be a unifier. It can be a unifier with people that are going to fundamentally disagree. And towards the end of the conversation today, we're going to talk a little bit about, so what do you do when you are in a position where you might be the island, or the board is flipped and you're no longer really sure where the board is going to be. Expectations really good, high-performing school districts around the country, when you interview the board members and the superintendents, they're not in lockstep, but they have common expectations. And I love Jim's line about the blurred lines, because that's where the conflict starts. And so if you have got a collaborative relationship, and I define collaboration as the ability to discuss or talk about practice. It's not where we're all going to get along and like each other all the time, but we can find that common ground. The student achievement piece is the place for that. If you have common expectations, and if they're two-way, how do you get there? And I am sure that each of you have seen where there's board members who don't share that common expectation. And so we've started with kind of the easy questions, and now we're moving into here, okay, this is really what it starts to look like, but how do you build that common expectation? And I'm not looking for a war story. What I'm looking for is, if you believe student achievement is what you're about, and I have to tell you, when I sit in board meetings around the country and I hear people talk about, we're all about the kids, it can be somebody who's on the far left and somebody on the far right, and the only thing they'll agree with is that they're for the kids. It's just that they have different agendas. So how do you get to common expectations?
Well, we've done workshops, and that's when we started doing those annual workshops to establish our board goals. And we've had varying opinions and different political philosophies, and we've managed to actually agree on our basic goals by the end of that workshop. And so that's been very, very helpful. And we've continued that. It was actually started by the board president prior to me, so I want to give her credit for that. What we've added to it as we've gone on is we realized maybe that first year or two we weren't revisiting the goals during the year. Suddenly we'd come to the end of the year and we go, oh, did we make our goals? So we've been adding, doing a mid-year review of our goals as a board, and then just trying to bring that up occasionally throughout our meetings to make sure that we are still focused on those things and not getting pulled away to what it really is that is the purpose, that is our purpose for being there.
Yeah, to piggyback on Janet's comment. So then for us, that clearly articulates to us as the administration on what's important for the school board at that time. And we actually add that to our executive leadership team agenda, and we progress monitor the board's goals. And in fact, I think what's been really helpful for us, now that Janet's really been driving that, is, you know, if I'm not clear on what that goal is, I clarify, like Janet, you know, I'm a little unclear, you know, okay, we're going to change the world, right? Well, what does that look like? And because I may be coming at it from one way, but the board may be, you know, coming at it from a totally different way. And for me, I just want to make sure I get it clear so that we can permeate that work with the rest of our team. And so, you know, I'm trying to think, Janet, of one that anyway, I mean, I won't get into it, but I just think it's important for us as the administration to have the board clearly articulate their respective goals, but certainly those are aligned with our strategic plan and our mission and our vision and so on. So, you know, for example, one of what does it look like for us? One of the board goals for this year is they want to make sure that we're putting in $1.25 million in Fund 41, right? So for capital maintenance projects. They raised it from $1 million to $1.25. One of the other goals is that we have a district dashboard. Well, why do we want a district dashboard? And then what does it look like? So Janet and I have been working with members of our team to determine, hey, Janet, is this what you were looking for or what the board was looking for as relates to a data dashboard? So again, very important work for us as the administration.
For school board members, one thing that I did before I even got elected was I had a very contentious race two years ago. I just reached out to the woman I was running against, and I said, hey, why don't we just get together and meet? And that actually kind of springboarded us to a place 2 years later till today that I never thought we would have got to. She shared her opinions, I shared mine. We agreed, we disagreed, but at the end of the day, we were both there for student achievement. We just had an election that didn't necessarily go the way that I had hoped that it would. So this Saturday, I'm meeting with a gentleman that won, kind of do the same thing. Hopefully, that'll springboard us to a good place. And then we do have a board retreat, but I think the most important thing is communication. Don't keep things bottled in. If you have opinions, share them, whether or not people agree with them or not. As long as people know where you stand, I think that makes the board work better. People know what you think, why you think it. As long as you can articulate why you think that way, I think it's the best thing for the school board to get along. Makes things a little easier for the superintendent, and at the end of the day, it's probably the best thing for the school district and the kids.
I think I can easily say that over the years and at the point that we're in, I can't think of a time that there is such a divide or such a difference of opinion. Let me start with that. Let me also say that I can't think of a time that there's been the degree of lack of civility than, you know, in the past. And I think that's really unfortunate, but it's also a challenge, and it's part of the answer to the question. When I think of the difficult scenarios or meetings, sitting in those, and a real strong difference of opinion, it seems basic, but I think we've kind of forgotten a little bit about it, is to say, is as important as it is to communicate your position, it's as important to listen to what the other side has to say. That's number one. And number two is just basic respect. And if I'm talking to anybody new coming onto the boards and the other stuff, you're going to have strong opinions. You're going to have a reason you ran for the board. But taking a few minutes to just sort of listen to the dynamics in the others is really important. For the veteran board members, the same thing. If somebody new coming on the board isn't going to know all the stuff you know, listen to what those concerns are as well. But as different as we may be, once we sit back and actually listen and then communicate and come to the best solution overall, but then the biggest and toughest part is to go with what the majority decides. Go with what the majority decides, and we don't continue that bait for the next 8 meetings. You've just gone a long way into resolving lots of your issues and avoiding problems.
It's really a segue to a question I had in the middle of the proposed questions today, and so I'm going to jump to that one. And it's about working with school board members or superintendents who you fundamentally disagree with. And, you know, what do you do about those who don't want to work with you? You know, and so Jim's kind of taken us into the one of the nuts of what a board superintendent relationship looks like. And so how do you work with somebody you disagree with or said mean things about, maybe not you, because each of you stepped up and put your name on a ballot, so you've done something that most Americans don't do, and you should be appreciated for that. But they're going to say mean stuff about your family or about your kids. And so how do you work with people like that? And I'd love to hear board, superintendent, attorney perspectives here, because if you haven't encountered that, congratulations. If you have encountered it, if it hurts, you deserve to let it hurt because it's supposed to hurt. If it doesn't hurt, you're numb, which means you're not a feeling person. But how do you deal with that?
So like I said with my last answer, I just reached out to her and said, hey, let's just meet. This was before I was elected. I didn't even think I'd get elected. So 2 years later, I've worked with the same 4 other people for the past 2 years. We've actually had a very good board. There's been hiccups with some other people, not necessarily me, but I think if there are problems on the board, you want to be a peacemaker. You can have your disagreements away from the meeting, but as long as things are civil at the board table, I think that's good for the community. They want to know that you have the best interests of the students in your heart. They don't want to tune into school board meetings and see people with vendettas bickering with each other. You're not going to solve anything. Like I said earlier, the election just didn't go my way that we just had, so I feel like there will be some issues as we move forward. I'm not necessarily sure how I'm going to navigate those waters, but again, as long as you have an open dialogue, as long as you're honest, and try and remember why you're there for the kids, for the school district, that should prevent any issues from coming at the board table. But I don't know, talk to me in 6 months maybe. maybe I'm completely wrong on that. But like I said, honesty and just being yourself and remembering why you're there is the best thing to get you through that.
I would say the best advice on that is don't take it personally. A lot of times the issue really isn't with you, it could be the other person. I did have a situation where a board member pretty much told me I was doing a horrible job. And I knew she put stuff on social media about me. And so just chose to not take it personally and just continue to work with her and conduct myself in a professional manner. And we were able to work together on the board, even though I know she didn't particularly care for me. So.
Just to add one thing too, just by reaching out to certain people, you really never realize the things that you guys have in common. So the guy that just won, he's real into baseball, I'm real into baseball. So I'm like, all right, there's the icebreaker. If you can find an icebreaker, you never know what other doors will open once you guys start talking. So just a little more advice.
I'll just piggyback off of that. It's true because you can always find something that you agree on together and are able to connect on that and work together.
I think, now from my perspective as a superintendent, I also serve on several boards or have served on several boards. And so I think trying to build consensus when you've got some pretty significant issues on the table, we can't forget to do that. And the other thing that I would say is we can agree to disagree. Like when did that become a problem? Like all of a sudden now it's like, well, now I hate you if you don't agree with me, or vice versa. Like, okay, we don't need to go that far. And back to Janet's point, it's nothing personal. We disagree based on whether it's our individual values or whatever it may be. Like, can we get to the point where, all right, the decision was made. It was, let's assume in New Berlin it was 4-3, and let's move on. The decision was made, and let's move on. Where it becomes problematic, and now I am not talking about the school district of New Berlin, to clarify, Janet, but instead on a board that I serve on, is when let's say that I voted 4-3 in support of an issue, and a person that did not get the positive vote, or two, continue to bring up that item constantly when it's already been decided. It doesn't do it, it becomes a distraction. And that's where I think it's important, in my opinion, to have a strong board president like we do, where Janet will clarify that that's not the issue at hand, And so I think just again, common sense prevails, and I know it's easy for me to say consensus and decision and move on, but I really wish we could get back to okay, we disagreed, but we've got some bigger fish to fry.
in following up on that, here's a role that I get so serious about the role of a board president or even the vice president as far as that goes. Yes, you run the meetings. Yes, you may be really involved in the agenda, but there are a lot of behind-the-scenes discussions that have to happen and that I've been involved in as well when a couple board members aren't getting along or where there's tension between the superintendent and a board member. That's not illegal to have a couple people talk about that, put that on the table, and solve that issue. We started with the discussion of what's the overall thing? What are we all here for? What are we running the schools for? And student achievement and seeing students do good things. Those kind of discussions we're talking about now are personal. That has nothing to do with the students. So when it's personal that we're attacked or we're attacking somebody else, God forbid, we're off the message. Somebody's got to drive that back, like the vice president or the president, sometimes the superintendent. But we're all in leadership roles. We never get to step away from those roles. We're a model of the students all the time, and what a great chance to take that opportunity to say, okay, we messed up a little bit here and we're off track. Let's put it on track and let's be the leaders we were all kind of elected to do with that. And we use it as a teaching moment in that sense too.
Let's talk a little bit about board superintendent communication. There's all sorts of textbook ways that board presidents and school superintendents are taught to keep their boards in the loop. There's walking quorums and open meeting violations, and I know there's some concerns about what that can look like, but how do the superintendents communicate with their boards and their board presidents? So there's two parts to this, and it depends on what the boards look like, how much the superintendent communicates with the board president separate from the board. We're not going to get into that, but how do you communicate? And also, what are some warning signs of like, oh, this isn't going well? And but as new board members, sometimes I think you get put into a box really quickly of, well, you don't understand open meeting laws, you don't understand walking quorums, and you know the heavens are going to collapse on you. But you're running a complex organization and you have to be able to communicate. And you have to communicate in timely fashion because the public's not going to wait for the next board meeting.
Yeah, so just generally speaking, Janet and I have a cadence of how we communicate. We've got a weekly standing meeting every Friday for at least an hour. Sometimes the meeting is 1 minute, and today we are here, so we missed our meeting. But then I also, and then I'll have a working Google Doc where I will toss issues that come to a head. She will toss some things, and so while we may not be on it in real time, I know what's on her mind, and she knows what's on my mind. And then, we make sure we don't miss anything from the previous meetings that we had, and make sure that we follow up on some of the things that we may have missed along the way. I also think committee meetings are really important because you can learn a lot in those committee meetings. Trust me, I am not all for more meetings. But for example, we just extended our transportation contract, and rather than bringing it to the full board first, we wanted to get the take of our finance committee to see if we were heading in the right direction or if it was going to be dead on arrival once we brought it to the full board. So I do think committee meetings are important. If you don't have committees, I think that's okay. But I use that as a communication mechanism to kind of feel things out about our board. I've got certain things that I text my entire board. Anytime I have an ambulance or a police officer that's not our SRO, they will always get a text from me. I've got a great communications director. He keeps a pulse on social media. He keeps a pulse on the media. And if we see or hear that things are stirring, the board is going to get a text from me. I will always clarify to them for open records requests. In many cases, please do not respond to this text. Please do not email me. Please call me individually if you have any comments, questions, or concerns. But again, those are just some general expectations on communication. Janet and I did not start these standing meetings until I think it was
recent.
November or December. But I believe that was something I felt Janet and I were not connecting enough throughout. And so I proposed this, Janet agreed, and in my opinion, I believe things are going much, much better as a result of this standing meeting. I obviously also produce, it's usually bi-weekly updates to our school board that are one-way communications. And then again, I leave it open-ended to, if you have any comments, questions, or concerns, please reach out to me independently. If I have a board member reach out to me with a specific question, for example, hey, Joe, where are we at with the hiring of the next boys basketball coach? I will always copy Janet in my response to that board member. Now, in my opinion, I don't believe that's a walking quorum. I hope I'm okay. All right, never mind. Oh,
No
geez,
comment?
okay. Wow.
No comment?
Wow.
We're talking hypothetical, Joe.
Yeah, this wasn't a real issue, right? Exactly. Never happened. But I'd like to make sure that I keep Janet in the loop whenever I'm also communicating with other individual board members, just so that she knows what's going on. Go ahead.
Those meetings have been very helpful, actually, and having that Google Doc is really helpful. And it's not, I know you keep saying me, but I'm there listening to our board members, and I'm hearing what they're saying in our meetings, and occasionally if somebody calls to tell me, I'm concerned about this. And so I'm able to then put that in the Google Doc because, we're all busy. We have jobs most likely outside of school board, and I forget things. And so that Google Doc has been really helpful where I just go in there, I put down, this is what we're going to talk about at our next meeting, because I'm making sure I'm there for our board members who it's just not feasible to be, obviously we can't have a whole meeting every time. So at least I'm that point person. To make sure things are being followed up on. Sometimes something will come up during a board meeting where they'll ask for more information, and then I'll be able to, in our one-on-one, check with Joe. I'm like, did you get this information yet? And then he will send that out eventually in a board update. Of course, we do a blind carbon copy to make sure that we're not going to have any inadvertent replies to all, where you could end up with one of those unscheduled meetings. And so generally, if there's going to be information outside of a board meeting, it is one way, and it's strictly information in order to make sure that we're complying with all those laws and making sure everything is public that the public should be involved with. Let's see what else. As the board president, I'm basically the point person. I'm coordinating things for people. So if there's something that I need to remind the board about, like be prepared for our next meeting. I make sure that you're prepared to discuss this. Same thing, I'll be sending out an email, a blind carbon copy to them just to make sure that they're prepared for the next meeting on a certain issue. And I know I just thought of something else, now I forgot about it. No, it's basically, if they have an issue that they want to ask Joe, again, he mentioned already, like a lot of times they'll carbon copy me as well. And that's just so that I know something's going on, so then I can make sure that it is being followed through on. And that's what I'm there for the board to help them with.
We're kind of the same way. We have a district update, keeps us in the loop with everything, kind of like a Google Doc, but just gets emailed to us each Friday. My communication with my superintendent has always been very fluid. I can text her and say, hey, if you have some time this weekend, give me a call. It doesn't matter when, just give me a call. She will. If I say, hey, do you have a quick minute? She will call me, not right away, but like pretty quickly. And sometimes we end up talking for 45, 50 minutes. So the opportunity is there to have communication. Even when I don't understand anything, I'm not in education. So I can just say, help me understand this. And she takes the time, she doesn't get frustrated, which makes it a little easier for me. And then I would assume she's the same way with the other board members. If I talk to the president, she has the information for me. If I talk to other board members, we have productive conversations. So then when we show up on Monday for the meeting, we're always very well prepared and ready to go. So good communication with the superintendent is extremely important.
Let me add the legal piece to some of that as I'm listening, and I think you're fine, Joe, just in terms of what you're talking about there. But the big distinction in terms of what you're talking about and how that was all answered, difference between communicating information and making decisions, okay? So communicating from the superintendent to a board member is one thing, and that's okay. Example, the superintendent says, I would like to meet with 3 members of the board before the board meeting, and then another meeting with several other the board members later about information for the board. Is that legal? Half of the room shook their head no, half of the room sort of said, I think I'm okay with that. Well, the district attorney in that particular situation that I worked on said that's okay, because the information was simply information. It was purposely and intentionally said, don't comment on it, don't tell us what your opinion on it is, don't tell us how you'd vote on it, but it saves some time and prep for the meeting. That's not different than what Joe was talking about in communicating with the board president or either the other 2 elected officials here saying that. Now, if on the other hand, you've got this group of 4 and this group of 3 and this group of 4 is talking on the phone to say we got this coming up and we want to share some information, how do you want to vote on it? Now you got a problem. Now you're talking about the decision-making aspect of things. Whether you've got a quorum or you don't have a quorum, those are all the red flags. Now you're into the problematic area. Really important policy of this state is that the work of the board gets done at a board meeting. Information's different, but the work of the board has to get done at the board meeting. Keep that distinction. And that'll keep you generally out of trouble as far as that goes with those differences.